The officer who stood haranguing the crowd before the tavern caught his movement and glanced over at him with a quick flash of a smile across his face. "You there! Are you willing to serve to defend your country against the violence that the king sends hither? Will you stay here and wait in the chill of winter for the redcoats to put all to the torch and warm you thus? Or will you turn out and send them back to England whence they came?" James did not much care for being personally singled out in this manner, but he could not dispute the appeal of the officer's call to duty. Although the past 4 years of warfare had little touched Virginia since independence had been declared, the newspapers and tavern talk were full of the suffering of New England and warnings of the risk to the local ports and cities. The officer wasn't finished, though. "I carry word that King George's troops have taken the port of Savannah in Georgia, and that they mean to use that foothold to drive northward, all the way to Boston if they can, right over the ground where you have been trying to survive." He looked each man before him in the eye to ensure that he had their full attention, and then waved an arm out toward the acres of tobacco stubble. "Would you see these fields run red with the blood of your neighbors? Will you stand by while the British seize your hard-won land and hand it over to some officer in their army to reward him for returning these states to the crown's despotism? Will you leave it to some other man to defend your wives, your mothers, and your children from the perils of war?" James's neighbor Phineas spoke up, answering in a deep rumble. "No, sir, I will not." He was joined by a ragged chorus of shouts, and James found himself adding to it, without conscious volition. "Or will you fight for our liberty, for our sacred honor, for our very way of life?" This time, the answer was more unified, and James felt more committed to the loud cry, "Yes," that he shouted with the other men. It really was only a matter of doing what he owed to these friends and neighbors, never mind to his own family. His father was too old to serve, and his brother far too young. His sisters both had newborn children to tend, and while James didn't know whether their husbands would heed the call to service, neither of them had turned out to hear the Virginian officer speak, so it was left to him to step up. In short order, the captain was adding his name to the roster, asking briskly, "Have you a gun of your own, Private Hatch?" James was forced to confess that he did not, and the officer dismissed his shame-faced explanations with a wave of his hand. "Never you mind. We'll get you equipped. Go and get your affairs in order, and I'll see you back here at sunrise. We'll muster and march out then for training." He wasn't sure what he had expected his parents to think of his decision to enlist. His mother had only gasped and retreated to her bedroom, while his father had chewed at the side of his cheek for a long time before saying only, "I must see to your mother. Mind that you give her no cause for grief, son, while you do what you feel your duty is." James could almost see his father grow smaller as he added, "I do wish you had come and sought my counsel before you rushed into this, James. You're a good boy, but I wonder if you know your own mind yet." James did not answer, and the older man turned and left without waiting for him to do so. He wasn't sure what he would have said, even if the man had given him the opportunity. He was, after all, a man grown, and it rubbed him raw to be treated as though he were still a boy. James was left feeling a sense of unfinished business when he departed the following morning, seen off only by the elderly slave who tended the kitchen hearth.